Well, they finally did it. Dan Snyder and company finally selling the Washington Commanders. I
Officially,
thought we'd never see the day.
officially official.
Officially official.
I'm
That's
so
right.
jealous. I'm so jealous of Commanders fans on a day like today. As someone who desperately wants Jerry Reinsdorf to sell the Bulls, and the
Yes.
White Sox,
And the
it's
Ricketts selling the Cubs. Yeah,
and the
there's a
Ricketts
lot
to
of
sell the Cubs to someone who actually really, really cares, and not someone who says they're a fan and says
yep,
they
yep.
care, but it doesn't really appear to. Um, it is one of those days where it's like anytime a team sells and it's a bad owner, there's situations like when Paul Allen died, the owner of the Seahawks, like his family have taken over. They're probably going to eventually sell, but that's a little bit of a sad sale because he was a really dedicated owner. Like, and even though he's a tech billionaire, he really cared, and the Seahawks like fans for the most part really loved him as an owner. Um, but when a bad owner sells, it is a feel good day for all of sports in the sense that you see the money and you say to yourself, every single deal and it happens with the market resets, you know what I mean? And so you just say to yourself,
Yep,
oh,
yep.
Jerry Reinsdorf, please see this, and say to yourself, I could make so much money selling my teams. Why don't I just sell my team?
Well, and it's like, especially when you're talking about bad owners of historic, clubs,
Oh,
like the Bulls carry with them that nostalgic, title. Obviously, like they
yeah.
were really bad for many, many years before the late 80s and into the 90s, but they have that iconic, attachment to them in terms of being, a high profile city and a huge market and one that had, the greatest player ever play for it. Washington is a similar thing where the league's just better if Washington is relevant again. I think the NBA is better if the Bulls are a really good team. The
Yeah.
NBA is better if the Lakers are a good team. There was 15 years of Laker just kind of maybe not 15. I would
The
say like a
90s,
solid decade though of the
the
Lakers really
mid
not being
90s were
relevant.
not good for the Lakers. Yeah, no,
No.
it is. And then, again, like that stretch post Kobe for a little while. You're right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Washington in our lifetimes as football fans has been Dan Snyder. I mean, you and I both agree for us, we're both 32. It's this whole, the, for us, football really, like the memories of really watching football started around 2000, right?
Yep.
And
Yep. For
so
sure.
being around 10 years old, like I remember that 01 Bears team, 13-3, Dick Drawn. Like that's like the beginning core memories of me as a diehard football fan. And he bought the team in what, 2000 and 2001, something like that. And so in our lifetimes, yeah, Washington has been that team like the Bears where they pop for maybe a season and then they're dreadful for long stretches.
Yeah.
And
They can never sustain
and on
success.
top of that, unlike the Bears, at least they're like the facilities, you don't get the nightmare stories out of like there's like, pipes breaking at FedEx Field. And, Jalen Hurts almost had the stands fall on him 2 years ago. I mean, he really is just, and at least with the Bears, it's a little old lady who runs it, not like a creepy pervert who's like, all the horrific, accusations against Snyder. It's been a terrible, terrible tenure. And Joe Harris, the new owner, is a Washington guy. He owns the Sixers and I think the Devils. So he's already now. It's
I didn't
part
even
of
realize that. I knew he was like he just buys a lot of
yeah.
stakes in sports teams. So,
Well, and he's got a
and he's
group.
an area native. He's
Yeah,
from DC, right?
yeah,
So
and he's got a group with him. So he's not like the sole owner, but he's the decision maker. He's the leader of the group.
sure.
And it would not shock me if he sells off one of the other two teams, the Devils or the like Sixers. Like he seems like becoming a football owner was like the goal, and he slowly built up to that. And being a Washington guy and owning that team, if I were him, Dan, I don't know how you feel. I would be very willing to change the name and change some of the colors. Like
please,
the colors
please.
go back to those OG colors, and the name, there was better names, Red Hogs, things that we liked better.
Yeah.
That I think the area would support it because he is a homegrown guy in his business prime 50s, to where he's going to have the team for 20 plus years and be able to leave his mark for sure. And hopefully then set it up for future success. So we'll see. I think there's going to be a lot of exciting things. Obviously, he's going to get a new stadium built ASAP. A lot of exciting things for Washington This year though, I laugh. I'm like, this year they really are going to be like, if I were Washington, if I was Joe Harris, I'd be secretly like, the tank is on. Like the tank is on.
Yeah.
Go get us Caleb Williams, and the tank is on.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, if Sam Howell actually, plays well, then maybe you actually feel that you've got a guy that maybe you could already build around. But even that, this is essentially his rookie season because he didn't get any meaningful playing time last year. So they've got to figure out the quarterback and plenty of other situations. They have a lot of rebuilding to do as an organization, not just as the team on the field. Most teams just have to worry about the players and building up the roster. This is a bigger haul, but I think Josh Harris is, up to the challenge for sure. Another bit of news as we get into our schedule release episode here on the Football Lounge. Really excited for this one. Obviously, there's the draft in April. You get the combine a little bit beforehand. Get the draft in April, schedule release, and then we're going into like mini camps and stuff and a couple news items. But really, this is the last bit of news we're probably going to get in terms of anything substantial happening until late June, early July, when we start getting into those camps and OTAs. So there is a little bit of break here, but of course we've always applauded the NFL on their ability to make the schedule release an event unlike any other. I can't think of any other sports, organization where you care what the schedule looks like.
Maybe like Premier League football fans, like they might
see that.
That might be the closest thing, but that's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, for sure. But as we get into that, we'll have plenty of notes on what happened because there are some circumstances outside of just the schedule release that we need to talk about, some new changes. But before we get to that, Matt Ryan, some news dropping in the CBS booth coming up this year. So he will not be making the highly sought after comeback. That's in quotes, by the way, for all you out there that are listening. Yeah, he's going to be a CBS analyst, kind of following the, quarterback. It's really mostly quarterbacks that end up being really good analysts that we're seeing more often than not. Obviously, there are the Greg Olsons of the world, et cetera. But I think it's probably just their ability to view the game in a holistic sense, right? Than one from a running back's perspective. As a quarterback, you have to see the game differently from all, areas.
They're already built-in kind of celebrities because we talk about the quarterback so much.
Very true.
And I also think that's part of it. Networks are looking for, can this person explain the quarterback game to us? Because that's so much of what it has become. I have a different take on Matt Ryan's retirement here, in the sense that I saw a lot of things online today, like he should have just done this last year. He's left such a bad taste in his mouth, how bad it was in Indy. I will forget the Indy year for Matt Ryan very easily for his career. He is a first ballot Hall of Very Good, and the very much so one of the weird kind of benefactors of how football changed, but also a dinosaur and a relic of how we will view football in the past versus the future.
Yeah,
We're being
passer.
The typical pocket passer. I mean, when he's drafted because of Tom Brady, right? And just like Tom Brady, mobile in his early days, and could pick up a 5-10 yard scramble, be in the pocket, but as they age became complete statues like a Peyton Manning. And a lot of people say, oh, he looked so bad last year. I think my biggest take on that is I give a guy credit. Matt Ryan, to him, there had to be 0.0 doubt when the year ended that it was the right decision to retire. Because last year, a year ago, I'm sure there was probably 50-50. Him saying, maybe in a new system, some different weapons, a better O-line, I can still sling it. I can still got it. But after the performance of last year, it's no. You're done. You fell off the cliff. Yeah. And for a lot of guys, they need that feeling. Peyton Manning in that final stretch, he knew I fell off the cliff. Now, he did win a Super Bowl because of that all-time great defense in his brain. but it's that I fell off the cliff. Tom, I think, finally had to realize he was never going to fall off the cliff, or it was going to take way too long for him to fall off the cliff. And all he was doing at that point was honestly hurting his legacy with, kind of these, in a weird way, like what LeBron James had the last couple of years, where it's like now LeBron's reversing because he's made a Western Conference Finals.
Right.
But if LeBron just had not made a Western Conference Finals this year and just like kept putting up stats, but barely making the playoffs or missing the playoffs and like winding his career down, we wouldn't hold it against him, but you'd lose some of that lure, that allure. So for Matt Ryan, my take was, I'm glad he played last year because he can go off into the sunset knowing he has zero left in the tank. There's nothing left. You gave it your all. You're not a Hall of Famer. That's okay. You had a hell of a career, and you're now going to make a ton of money talking football on TV for a long time to come.
I think he'll be great too. Because I do think he'll be really good. He's always been great with the media and stuff like that, and being able to explain things, I think it's going to be something he's good at for sure. But no, it's interesting, just to put a bow on it, kind of wrapping up what you were talking about, because I think you're definitely right that people will view a lack of championship success as a con against the LeBrons, or even if Brady played 2 more years and did get a championship. But it's kind of funny because it's like, it's really hard to get to the postseason, and they did that. They still did that with ease. Tom still was a part of a team that was still in contention to get that far. So even if the success wasn't at the level that you'd want or that you remembered, it was still pretty damn good, for a while there. So no, it's just funny how that can kind of play out for some of the legends. But yeah, no, I agree, Matt Ryan. It's a shame kind of, because while I never thought of him as a true Hall of Fame legendary type of player, the guy was on pace most of his career to shatter like every record. I mean, when he in that like 7-year run, with Shanahan and stuff, I mean, this guy was putting up ridiculous numbers.
Yeah. And the thing is, Julio will make the Hall of Fame. And a large part of that, his acceptance speech should be a lot of like, I was lucky to play with a really, really good quarterback for a long stretch. And it's similar to Calvin Johnson, like Calvin Johnson, Matt Stafford, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones. It's very, very similar. The difference is,
I never thought of that.
The difference is Matt had just a little bit more of that pure talent. I think we would agree. And Matt then getting the Super Bowl victory is the one thing, depending on how Matt Ryan bounces back this year and next year. I mean, Matt Stafford, there is a chance that Matt Stafford can make the Hall. But
for sure.
But if Matt had went to the Rams and had a really good year and then a fall off the cliff year and then he retired, we'd be saying the same thing. I mean, they're the same exact guy in that way. Insane stats, a great run, really healthy for long times, and they were paired up with 2 of the biggest physical freaks at the positions of all time, and they put up stats on the league like we had never seen before. But the fact of the matter is, Stafford had enough left in the tank to get a Super Bowl victory, and that may be the thing that helps him cement himself in Canton if he can bounce back and have 2 really good years here now, kind of roll out this career with the Rams.
It's going to be a big year for the Rams to figure out if they can actually turn the trajectory of that organization that took a massive decline last year. So speaking to the NFL schedule, which is what this episode's about, let's talk about a couple of the rule changes and kind of a couple highlights of the schedule, and then we'll get into maybe a handful of matchups that we are most looking forward to. I've got my list. I'm sure you've got a few on your mind as well. But one of the things that, stood out was the scheduling flexibility. That's kind of a big change for this year. They've always been able to schedule games to flex it to a 425 game, or even, late in the season, flex a Sunday night game. But now it's the Fox, games that were almost primarily NFC away teams and CBS for AFC is now kind of going to be a toss-up. The NFL is going to say, we're going to determine, based on like how it shakes out from week to week, who's going to get what game. And so that's kind of interesting too, because our entire watching career, you mentioned that we started the early 2000s. It's always been, Fox associating with the NFC and
Yeah.
CBS associating with the AFC. And there was always a few, shakeups there from there to there. But yeah, now it's going to be pretty much the Wild West of games. And I think that's pretty cool.
And it's interesting because basically what the NFL is saying is now, two things at this point. First off, the majority of NFC games you're still going to watch on Fox. The majority of CBS games you are still going to watch on CBS. But what they're basically saying is, when we get down to the wire here, guys, we are going to move games around network to network and all these things because it's going to help you, the networks, and it's going to help us. We're going to always try to get the most eyeballs on any game. And if Fox has 3 great games and CBS has none, they're going to move shit because they're going to say, sorry, you're still going to get your ratings, but we're going to make sure the NFL gets eyeballs on these games. And part of that is, too, this is, to me, a lot of this directly reflecting from Amazon. Amazon spent so much money, $5 billion, and their slate of games last year was terrible. And the ratings for Thursday Night Football were god-awful. Now, part of that is because it's on Amazon, and not everyone has Amazon Prime. The other part of it is we did not want to watch Al Michaels, who is talking about a guy who he had a Matt Ryan year last year.
He did. Yeah.
Only he's the first.
It was more apathetic than anything else.
Yeah, he was more Peyton Manning in that final year. Like they need to get Al out of the booth. Kirk was great. And then they were saying to themselves, we are going to force our networks to have good games because we know how much you're paying us. So yes, you may lose a game that you really wanted to keep, but in the long run, on those weeks where you have a bad week,
it's going to help.
They're going to take care of you. And all that's going to do is it's going to make sure that the partners of CBS, NBC, Fox, Prime, and, they're all going to ESPN. They're all going to keep spending huge amounts of money on the NFL. And that's great for the NFL. It's great for the TV partners. And at this point, we don't care where the games are being watched on at that time anymore. What we care about is, wait, crap, why are there 4 great games at noon and the 3:00 slate sucks on week 12? That's done. They're going to move that. And that's great for us, the consumer. It's going to force us to stay on our couches and watch more competitive football.
So let's talk about Monday Night Football and the league saying that those games now will also be subject to being flexed from week 12 on. We've never seen that before. That's been the one game that is ironclad. It's going to be that schedule for the entire year. That is no longer the case. So an interesting development there.
And don't flex week 12. That's when the Bears are on Monday Night Football. I want my I want to see little Bears on Monday Night Football. They're the first ones that had the chance to getting flexed. Bears, Vikings. Dan, I think to me, that's just going to be one of those moments where it's going to happen to every fan base at some point. But you say to yourself, well, that sucks. We just went from having a full week's rest to now short week's rest. But again, the NFL is, people who say the NFL is rigged, I just never believe it. I don't believe major sports is rigged. It's like the NASA moon landing thing. It's like, how many people would have to be in on this to make it quiet so it wouldn't actually leak? But one thing the NFL, I think they're admitting to us all with a lot of these changes is we are about entertainment. We are about getting numbers and getting big ratings. And the big ratings, no matter what network it's on, is best for the NFL as a whole. So if that means Patrick Mahomes is going from Thursday night to Monday night to Sunday night to Thursday night to Monday night, the whole flipping season, if that's what's getting the ratings, they're going to do it because that reads more money. That gives more money to the teams. The owners get even richer. It trickles down to the players eventually with salary cap increases. And so I think that's what we're in, this kind of new modern version of the NFL with this, where the NFL is finally just admitting this is a television product. We don't care that you had tickets for a Sunday game at noon and now it's a Monday night game and now you can't go. Someone will buy those tickets. We don't care. We care that it's going to be playing on every bar and we have big ratings and not the 0-7 so-and-so versus the 0-8 and no one cares. We are getting big names on the screen as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it does really suck because to that point, the leagues across the country and the world really are becoming less and less reliant on the diehard fans, the ones that show up to the stadium, because these teams are making more and more money off of these TV deals, and the league as a whole is realizing that their revenue in total as the NFL, as the Shield, if you will, makes more money from TV than individual concession sales for the Jacksonville Jaguars in their own stadium, even though the teams individually benefit from those. Certainly they probably also feel we're going to have people in the stands no matter what, but it does suck. I mean, I think back to when I went to that Bears Steelers Monday night game 2 years ago in Pittsburgh. That was a whole trip for Grace and I. I mean, we planned everything out, flew to Pittsburgh, made it a quick trip. It was just a couple days, but like, to think that I could have bought plane tickets, flew out there, and then we don't know the specifics. I haven't seen any reporting on when they need to make these determinations. I imagine it has to be the week of, at like 5 days before. I don't think they could make that change Sunday morning, say, actually, you're playing today. Like that just.
It'll be I bet it'll be the Monday before, because you'll know by then, by Sunday night, the majority of the games are concluded. You'll know if a team, you were expecting it to be Giants versus Eagles, but Jalen Hurts got in. I'm just knocking all the wood. I'm just making scenarios up now, but Jalen Hurts is out, and the Giants run a 6-game losing streak, but yet the Bears are playing the Lions, and both teams are riding high right now, and they're battling for playoffs, and it's Chicago, big market. I would imagine by Monday or Tuesday they can make that determination. But that'll be a fascinating little wrinkle of the season. But
yeah, either way, it screws with people.
And then, again, the NFL's admitting,
I mean, it's 100%. I mean, that is what they care about. That is certainly their focus. And I mean, I understand it. I do get it from a business perspective that's, the majority of fans are going to be happy with all of these, flexes, but it's going to be the people that bought tickets to that game or, took off work. That's really going to, mess with them. But it is what it is. Nothing we, Joe Schmo, can do about it. So we just got to hope for the best moving forward. But as a spectator, it is going to be interesting, and I think we're going to get some really good games in the final 6 weeks of the regular season for sure. The final item of note, actually there's two. There's now going to be Thursday Night Football, which is the bane of the existence of any player, really probably in coaching staff as well in the league. They're now going to be subjected to potentially 2 Thursday night games in a season. And this is the first year that is taking place. 5 NFL teams, including your Bears and my Steelers, will be playing 2 Thursday night games. So that's a huge difference as well. I mean, now we're talking short weeks or long weeks, if you think on the back end, for these teams. But it's an interesting thing there. I will say, for the Steelers' perspective, they are at home for both of these Thursday night games, which is great. If you're going to have 2 Thursday night games, having them both at home is a huge bonus. But what were your thoughts on teams getting now 2 Thursday night games? And this was clearly also a move to make these games better, because the 5 teams are the 49ers, the Jets with Aaron Rodgers now, the Bears, who are on the upswing in a big market, and the Steelers. 5th team, the Saints. They're probably not as big of a draw, certainly. But nonetheless, those 5 teams certainly have passionate fan bases and are usually good products to watch in prime time.
Well, part of it, Dan, is the fact that you have teams like the Lions who are now playing 3 games on Thursday. The opening game, they play on Thanksgiving, and they have a Thursday night game. Now you can say the opening game.
Well, yeah, because they're playing Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Yeah. So your team, in a normal year now, for in the future, a team like the Lions or the Cowboys, who always play on Thursday night, on Thursday at Thanksgiving, you could eventually have 3 Thursday games. You know what I mean? And if you are then say they put the Chiefs on Thanksgiving and the Chiefs get opening game and the Chiefs get, 2 Thursday games, you got to have 4 games on Thursday. And again, it goes to show you the NFL cares way more about the TV product than the fans actually going to the games. Because it's NFL. They're going to sell. It's not like these stadiums are a million seats and it's like, we have no one to sit in these seats and it looks empty. They obviously have people in the seats. The seats are always, the stands will always be filled. So that it's never going to look embarrassing or empty or anything like that when you're watching like the USFL or the XFL games where it's like there's only 10,000 people there. But I'll say this about Thursday Night Football. That is, again, the NFL just immediately bending the knee to Prime, saying, you spend $5 billion, or this is what we will make this concession and try to give you as best of games as we can. They can't flex the Thursday, which obviously because it's just making players play on Thursday anyways is cruel. So at least those are built in. Those aren't going to change. And who knows, you may be one of those teams that gets a Thursday night in, and then you're supposed to play Sunday, but then you get the extra bye because you get flexed to a Monday. So it could end up benefiting some teams at some points in time. If you're really good and you're having a good season and you get flexed in some interesting spots, but also, NFL players, Dan, like Peyton Manning and the greats, a lot of them, Tom Brady, they're creatures of habit, and they like knowing I'm going to have my meal here. I'm going to wake up at this time. I do all this. And when the schedule constantly gets changed on you, I think this is going to be one of those things where you're going to see some fluky games. Or the NFL's trying to do this to make it to be the best of the best, awesome games, huge ratings. But I think it also could backfire at times. It's like that team just has a rookie coach and they were unprepared for the flex and their schedule got out of whack, and a young quarterback who just wasn't, you know what I mean? Or things go haywire. And all of a sudden you think, oh, we're doing the right thing. We're moving this team into prime time, but that team's unprepared because of their organization to handle it. And they end up laying an egg, a stinker. I think that could be a real thing that happens in this first couple of years with all these changes.
It could be. It absolutely could be, because we're talking about the human beings at the end of the day. Travel takes a toll on you. Short weeks, multiple short weeks. That's going to be tough to overcome for a lot of these teams to be able to do that. Now, there is the benefit on the back end, as you mentioned. You get a longer rest and potentially even an even longer one if you get flexed to Monday night. So those are some possible pros to this schedule. But in terms of heading into these Thursday night matchups, definitely going to be a challenge for these 5 teams. So we'll see how that plays out over the course of the season. Finally, we have 5 international games now, so we are expanding. Last year, we had the game in Munich, Germany, featuring Tom Brady. His first international trip, playing over there. Now we're gonna have 2 games. It's gonna be November 5th, Miami at Kansas City, and November 12th, Colts at Patriots. And then we're gonna have 3 London games, with the Jaguars basically just setting up shop for 2 weeks. They are going to be playing October 1st against the Falcons, and then the next week, Jaguars staying in town to take on the Bills. We all know that London's got that huge Jaguar fan base, and that's just going to continue here with Jacksonville playing twice now in London, and then the final game coming the next week, October 15th, Ravens and Titans. So interesting. They are making these games all in a row. The Munich games, back-to-back weeks, London games, 3 weeks in a row. So we got 5, and we've been talking, Mexico City's been talked about plenty of times as well. So we'll see, if that ends up getting inserted here into the mix. But 5 games, we may be seeing 10 in the next, 5 years. Who knows? But that's what we got slated, and I'm pretty excited for these matchups. All matchups that I think I'd be looking forward to seeing. Jags, Falcons, but at least you're seeing Trevor Lawrence, and maybe the Falcons are going to be fully healthy and they've got some weapons there, so could be fun.
Yeah, I think for me the biggest thing with the international schedule is that I was pumped that the Bears are playing the Chiefs in Kansas City. Because the last time the Bears played the Chiefs in Kansas City was 2015, when the Chiefs weren't exactly high flying. It was kind of the beginning of a little bit of the Alex Smith era, and it was Jay Cutler starting quarterback. And so the word on the street is the Chiefs basically told the NFL front office, we'll play your stupid Germany game, but you got to make it an AFC team. Like we rarely get a chance to play the NFC North, let alone host the Chicago Bears. And they know that, fan base travels well and everything that means. And so I think that was really smart of the Chiefs. And I thank them for that because I don't want to have to watch, wake up at 6 a.m. to watch that my Bears get demolished by the Chiefs and be really in a bad mood the rest of the whole day. But I will say, to me, the interesting thing is the Jags. I mean, this is the first, where there's smoke, there's fire 2 weeks in a row, testing out that schedule of how does it work for a team staying in a location. Because everything they talk about, if a team moves to London, would be stuff like this, where they're in London for like 3 weeks at a time and they have teams come to visit them. And then they would be in America for 3 weeks at a time and they're on the road, So it's this kind of beginning of that, NFL, I think, probably testing that and what that looks like and how that works and get there. I bet they're going to get a lot of feedback from the Jags and Jags players about what that experience was like, what could be better, what was, what would improve it. Do this next time. Don't do this next time. So to me, that's the most interesting thing about the international games this year.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't even think of it that way in terms of a sample size or a testing, uh, you know, sample for what's to come if they were potentially to move there. So I do, yeah, that's a good point because this would certainly be a helpful indicator of how that would look and what that schedule would, bear out. So definitely looking forward to seeing how things evolve here on the international slate. Looking to some schedule standouts. If you want, maybe we can just go back and forth, listing a couple games that we noticed on the schedule, maybe that are impactful or ones that were, most looking forward to just at a glance in the early going. So, I mean, I'll throw one out there to you. The first Monday Night Football for me, Bills at Jets, I think is awesome.
Yeah.
It's going to be our first look at Aaron Rodgers in a Jets uniform, and it's a divisional game. It's on prime time. I think that's a pretty sweet first Monday Night Football to look forward to. Probably one of the better ones in recent memory.
Yeah, absolutely. When we do this, I never try to look too far beyond like the early weeks because God only knows what teams will look like by a certain point in time. You know what I mean? For me, obviously, I really am looking forward to my Bears at Kansas City. Like that is a huge one in week 3. But as far as like an impactful larger game, I'm really, really interested in Sunday Night Football, October 1st, my birthday on week 4. And I know we just talked about it, but Kansas City at the Jets. I mean, the Jets have a brutal schedule. They're one of the teams that we knew their schedule was brutal, but now even the putting the pieces of it together make it even more fascinatingly difficult. And I think that's going to be an early season. Like, are the Jets for real? You're hosting the Chiefs in Sunday night in New York. Should be good weather still, early October in New Jersey, New York. And I'd be like, all right, do we write off the Jets? Do we care about the Jets the rest of the season, or are the Jets for real and Aaron Rodgers put on a show against Mahomes?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be Aaron Rodgers finally against some of these AFC quarterbacks that we've been waiting to see. Like, how can you go toe to toe in this stacked conference? A couple other ones that just stood out to me: Week 2, Colts at Texans. Are we gonna see Richardson versus Stroud that early on? To me, I can't think of being excited to see a Colts Texans game in quite some time. This is probably the first one that I'm really looking forward to. In that same
Great
week
choice.
is Chiefs Jaguars. I want to see how Lawrence in year 3 looks against Mahomes. Now we're going to start to see, like, how are you stacking up against the best of the best?
Yeah.
And it's going to give us a good determining factor on, like, how are the Jags looking this year? Are they actually ready to make another step forward? So those are a couple ones that, like, definitely noteworthy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did a great
and then,
job.
you know,
with, like,
finally just going to make. Oh yeah, go ahead.
The New Year's Eve game, like that's awesome. Like if everyone's healthy, Chiefs Bengals New Year's Eve is gonna be great. I think the whole opening week schedule. I mean, let's be honest, Lions at Chiefs is gonna be really fun because we get that Jared Goff, Patrick Mahomes kind of rematch from that Monday night epic game years ago. Speaking, it was supposed to be in Mexico City. So I think overall the schedule looks very enticing. And I know that an episode's coming on up here later. We'll talk more in depth about your Steelers and my Bears, the schedule in the coming shows. But there's some really interesting nuggets about West Coast trips and all those type of things that you can really start to feel out with your team. And the NFL, like they screwed over the Giants. They're on the road 7 of the first 10 weeks. It's crazy that the Giants have to go through that. So, the schedule, if you're sitting out there saying the schedule doesn't matter, it absolutely does. And now, granted, everyone can get injured and all these things happen once you start playing the games. But when you're looking at it right now and you're trying to make predictions about what the season will go through, it absolutely matters, things like that.
Last thing I'd like to note before we, kick this off to next week's show and beyond. The Chiefs and the Eagles, two of the, Super Bowl teams here, they have some unbelievably difficult stretches in their schedule. So the Chiefs from week 4 until their bye in week 10, they play the Broncos twice, the Chargers, the Vikings, but then the Jets and the Dolphins all in that stretch. The Eagles have a super easy start. And then after week 10, the rest of the games. Chiefs, Bills, 49ers, Cowboys, Seahawks. And then, you end with Giants, Cardinals, Giants. The Giants are a divisional game, so it's not a gimme. But the Chiefs, Bills, Niners, Cowboys, Seahawks in a row, that's pretty brutal.
It is brutal, but I make the argument that I think the Eagles are better than anyone in the NFC. So I'm going to favor them in those games. They do get the Niners at home, so that helps. And you got to play the Chiefs again in Arrowhead. Like, okay, but I think they'll be fired up for that game. You know what I mean? They're the losers of the Super Bowl. So do I think the Chiefs, I'll put it this way. It sucks. And I don't necessarily believe that the Chiefs or the Eagles will be the 1 seeds in their conference, even though I think they may still be the best teams in their conference. Because in order to be the 1 seed, you got to have a great schedule that breaks your way and you can run through. You know what I mean? You can pick up easy dubs.
Absolutely, 100%. That'll do it for us here on the schedule recap. More from the schedule to come in the coming weeks.